Why don't I go ahead and introduce John briefly, and then I'll let him speak for himself. Is that okay?
Sure.
Very good. Okay. So John Sullivan is all of 22 years old, if I'm not mistaken, and born and raised here in Spokane, attended Meade High School and then the University of Washington in Seattle. And originally he intended to become an engineer, but ended up in an economics track and now majors in math and economics. And he studied abroad for 2 quarters at the University of Queensland in Australia, and is currently taking a year of part-time studies because virtual learning is not necessarily his favorite thing. So I think sounds like he's waiting until things can be in person again to go full bore with college. Does that sound about right, John?
Yeah. Yeah, no, that sums it up perfectly.
Very good. Very good. Well, why don't I let you say anything else you'd like about yourself, and then let you talk about your program.
Yeah, okay. My name is John Sullivan. I went to Meade High School, 22. I really love, I think that a strong sense of community is one of the most important things in this world for people's happiness and for society as a whole. And so that's really what I'm trying to focus on with this nonprofit organization. And I think that with a lot of society today doesn't put nearly as much of an emphasis on community in a sense of belonging. And I think that's a big problem with society today. And so that's what I'm trying to reinstate.
Wonderful.
Very good. And so what was it that inspired you to begin work on the Minerva proposal?
What inspired me was I was in Seattle and I noticed that I was walking through and I noticed that there were a lot of people, homeless people specifically, just laying down on the ground. And it looked like people would just walk right over them. They're basically just inanimate objects, part of the sidewalk, basically. And that disgusted me, honestly. It disgusts me still. And I mean, yeah, I think something needs to happen where those people don't feel invisible and they feel like they can talk and tell people about themselves and that they're actually humans with dreams and aspirations and feelings and thoughts and not just something to walk over or avoid looking at. So that's what inspired me.
And so what did you do next to try to get the organization started?
Well, what I did next was how I started the organization first was right now I'm only operating in Spokane, but I have plans to operate in most of the West Coast, including Seattle, Spokane, Portland, Boise, eventually San Francisco, but that's far. So right now I'm just in Spokane though. But yeah, what I did first is I went to a lot of the homeless shelters, like House of Charity in Spokane, and I would just stand around. And this was super scary for me because I don't look like I'm a part of the group, and so I'm an outsider to them. But I would only go during the daytime, so it'd be safe. But I would literally just approach random homeless individuals and ask them if they had any friends or if they themselves had any talent in the artistic expression. And I would ask, and sometimes they would not be very receptive, but most of the time they would trust me and they would be super ecstatic to either show their own work or to help their friends out and show their work too. Like one lady, her name was Katie O. She didn't want to tell me her last name because I think it was something like an abusive boyfriend or something. So she didn't want me to put her last name on the website. But she said that she'd been depressed for weeks on end. And when I approached her and like told her that I thought that she had talent that should be shared, she said it inspired her to continue to work. And yeah, that's why I do it a lot, because the look of like the hope, the rekindling of hope is massive for me. So yeah, really, I just cold approach people right now. I have a flyer now, but that's how I started. was cold approaching people.
Very good. And have you sought out partnerships with either universities or colleges or schools regarding kind of providing support, whether that's spaces for future shows or art supplies or things like that?
Okay, I haven't approached any universities as of yet. I approached the two big art stores in Spokane. One was, I think, Salvage Art, or it was Art Salvage. And there was one other one that I approached them early on, like months ago, but they didn't seem very interested at the time because coronavirus had decimated their profits. And so they were going through a hard time themselves. So they weren't really able to donate any art supplies. And then I also approached Spokane SpokaneArts.org. Like, it's a big art community. And I'm still waiting on a response from them.
What a challenging time to be starting a nonprofit organization.
Yeah, but it's also a good time because normally I'd be full-time in school, so I wouldn't have time normally for this. So I thought, since I'm taking a year off, I might as well do something productive. So
fair enough. Fair enough. So I think either on your website or in a note you sent, you said that you're looking to spotlight the work of homeless and otherwise disadvantaged individuals. And I'm curious sort of what kinds or categories of artists you've been working with or talking to so far.
Okay, yeah. One of the guys, his name's Ernie Everett. He's not homeless, but he has cerebral palsy. And so he has barely any motor function. When I talked to him, like, he could barely speak. He was almost unintelligible what he was saying, but he's not homeless, but he has just severe physical limitations. And so I feel like someone like that would qualify. Maybe someone that's not homeless anymore, but they recently became, like, they're low income apartments now. Like one of the guys, Carl Schultz, he's not homeless right now, but he has been for almost all of his life. And he has PTSD from serving in the military, and really just financially disadvantaged individuals. So people that are struggling to afford housing, maybe they're not homeless, but they're close, or people with severe, like, physical limitations, maybe even like mental limitations too. So those are the people I'm trying to spotlight.
I see. Sounds like folks who often, I guess it's a cliche, but fall through the cracks or aren't necessarily on most people's radar, that they're kind of in the shadows, as it were.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Let's see. So I'm definitely interested in delving into something that you also mentioned in a note, which is that before launching your organization, you looked into research that supported this kind of model or this kind of a program. And I'm interested if you could talk a little about what you've learned about why or how these programs can help people transition out of difficulty.
Okay. Unfortunately, I didn't find the exact research that I thought I'd be able to back my claims. So there I'm a little bit weak. But in economics, I remember, okay, yeah, this is going to be super vague. I'm sorry. It's not concrete.
That's all right.
Just from what I remember in economics, in my courses, there was something about having a skill in one, like having skill in one field can translate. And so once you start to feel like you have success in one field, then it starts to boost your own confidence. And then you feel accomplished enough that you're able to branch out in other fields. And so what I was trying to find was research that would support that, even just an unmarketable skill, because really art is very hard to market. It's hard to make money being a successful artist.
You don't say.
Yeah. So it might not in itself be a very marketable skill, but I remember very vaguely that improving aspect, like a single feeling competent in a single aspect or in a single field can improve the confidence one has in one's own ability, and that may transfer into being able to take risks in other fields and having the confidence to fail because you know that you are at least able to be competent at one thing. And so you're not as much adverse to taking risks of failing because you already know that you are capable of certain things in life.
Well, it's often said, I think this has become pop psychology at this point, but I think there's merit to it. If you set small but achievable goals, it can create momentum for change in one's life. And it sounds like that's at least part of your rationale with regard to giving people opportunities they might not otherwise have to express themselves and to be known.
Yeah, that's what I was going for. And just instilling more confidence in these individuals and providing them a sense of hope.
Right, that makes sense. So you've said that you're working to create, to make the Minerva Proposal into a 501c3 or into a nonprofit organization that is recognized and registered. Where are you in that process currently?
So right now I'm recognized by the state of Washington as a nonprofit organization, but to register as a 501c3, you have to be recognized federally. And for that, I would need a board of, right now, I have a board of directors, but it's only me. So right now, what I really need is people to help to join my team that would be interested in helping out, because you need to have 5 members in your board of directors for you to become valid in the eyes of getting a 501c3 designation. And right now, I only have a single board of director. That's my biggest limitation right now. I applied, I got my EIN for the tax.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm getting that right now in my business license, an MBL. And then I need to set up the bank account. I'm going to set up a bank account. But right now, what I have is just I'm recognized by the state of Washington as a nonprofit organization. That's where I am right now.
Well, definitely a good step. So I remember you also saying that part of the goal for your program is to help artists potentially get to the point where they're taking commissions for their work, and the idea being that they could create their way out of poverty, I think is the phrase that you used. Can you talk a little bit more about how that might look for some of the artists that you work with?
Yeah, okay. One of the guys that I think is my most talented individual, and I would say my most driven, his name is Carl Schultz. I already talked about him a little bit, but he has dreams to eventually create his own business doing graphic design for t-shirts. And so right now what I want to do is, for him especially, I just want to get his name out there, and I have his contact info. Like for all the individuals, if they wish, I list their contact information and like ways to get a hold of them. And eventually I want to work a way for my website to have its own in-house messaging service. So that way it doesn't have to be as personal as like an email, or a text message, or because some of these people don't have emails also. And so having an in-house messaging service where someone could like log in, then they wouldn't have to create an email, and really all they would need is access to a computer in the memory of their username and password. So that's my goal right now. What I do is for each individual, I have their phone number, their email address, or their Facebook page. Because some of them, that's like their only way of communication is Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I don't like that because it's a bit too personal, I think. And some people might be scared to approach. So eventually I want to have an in-house messaging service, but right now that's what I have for commissions.
I would assume that currently the gallery, as it were, is all virtual. There's no space where any of the work is housed. But
Yes.
I'm also assuming that the goal, and correct me if I'm wrong, is to eventually have some kind of space, even if it's a relatively small one, to have some of the work that can be displayed, like a gallery.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly that. Exactly that. I'm not sure if I would rather do rotating like a temporary in-person ones. So like maybe once a month, like we rent out a space and we have in-person. I think that might be the most financially sound because having a full-time art gallery,
Mhm.
I just don't know if there's enough market for that. But I think like having like a once a month temporary, maybe a weekend in-house showcase for the artwork is probably the best move financially. I think it makes the most sense. Yeah, that's what I want eventually, but I would need more funding for that because yeah,
Sure, sure. Did you start this work before COVID?
no,
Oh, you
no,
started it after the pandemic had begun.
yeah, I started it pretty late. I think I started it August, late August.
Oh, wow. So you're just getting it off the ground here.
Yeah, yeah, it's still pretty young,
Okay.
but yeah.
Well, let me ask you, and then after a little bit more, I want to open up to any questions that audience members may have. But I wanted to ask, so far in your interactions with some of the artists that you've met and worked with,
Mhm.
and in working so far on this project, how has your perspective changed? How do you feel like it's changed you?
My perspective has changed in that I've seen one lady in particular, Katie. She was a pretty decently well-off woman. Like
Hmm.
she wasn't like she was good looking. She was a good looking young woman. She was decently well educated. Not, I mean, no, not a college degree, but I mean, I could tell that she at least was somewhat intelligent and like she seemed like she had her life together. And then she was a rodeo queen in some like Idaho thing. Like she was a small town girl, but she was like a popular, like well connected small town girl. I don't know. She didn't really tell me how, but somehow just a girl like that ended up she's addicted. I think she was addicted to some sort of drugs now. I don't know what. She didn't tell me. But just to see the fall from grace that is possible from drug addiction. And also, another thing that struck me was how difficult it seems to be. I don't know, but it seems that it's very difficult to work through rehab. And I don't know, I just also, it's difficult because once you're there and you're already poor, the people around them, it seems like they don't want them to get better. So, like, they'd want their friends to be with them and so their friends are always pushing them to do some sort of drug with them or like skip going to rehab or steal their stuff. Like a bunch of the guys have their artwork stolen all the time or their art supplies stolen and just like their bikes, their mode of transportation, they have no way to get around other than a bicycle and that's easily stolen too. And so yeah, I didn't realize how difficult it would be to actually get out of that place and especially when you have no hope and when your only hope of escape is a minimum wage job, like that's not very enticing either. Working 40 hours at a fast food restaurant, like I don't know, like it doesn't seem nothing really seems it seems like a terrible place to be. And so that's what I've learned.
There are a couple things that kind of jumped out for me from what you were saying. One is that, as I'm sure you're aware, and probably everyone on the call is aware, in the last few years, the opioid addiction epidemic has, to my mind at least, brought the challenge of addiction more to the front of people's minds. Maybe not across the board, but certainly it's been talked about much more in the last few years than during any period of time I can remember. And the story that you told about Katie sort of also highlights that um, calamity can befall maybe not anyone, but very few people are completely immune from what you describe as a fall from grace. I mean, really, if nothing else, COVID has reinforced the reality that a lot of people were just getting by before and they didn't have, the statistics about people's savings. They don't have much of a buffer against potential calamity. And you've described how allowing for providing a space for self-expression helps to humanize the artists that you're working with. And I would hope also, as the project progresses, that more people are able to realize that no one's as insulated as they think, or at least not, maybe Jeff Bezos is, but most people aren't as insulated as they might think against disaster. And that can be a unifying and also a humanizing thing, so that we don't see an other there.
Yeah. Also, what also struck me was how often these people came from very poor housing, like they grew up in very poor situations in the first place. And so they were already, as it is, like it's not like they may have made bad choices, that's a given, but also the choices available to them were not as good as the choices available to most people. So like if you have a drug addicted family, like you see it's more available to you. It's not as stigmatized. You don't think like, or if your parents don't encourage education at all, you don't care about school. You don't, yeah, just how many, or abusive families causing trauma that needs to be healed and they self-medicate with some sort of drug. Just, yeah, another thing that struck me was, yes, like the fall from grace happens, and also so it can happen to anyone, people from poor bad families or fall from grace. So yeah.
Generational poverty seems like what you're talking about, the way in which poverty can and does recreate itself through generations unless something interrupts that. So at this point, I'd like to open up the conversation to any questions or comments that any of our attendees might have. And I'll make my view such that I can see you all a little better. So any questions for John, or any comments on anything that we've talked about so far?
Well, I just want to say how admirable I think this endeavor is. And you have to be a very sensitive, caring person, and I admire that. I'm just wondering if there's how you're going to go about getting help for funds that you will need, and could you has your project been advertised in the Spokesman Review and other sources that you would need to help you along with this?
Yeah, okay. No, we have not had any advertising from any newspaper as of yet, but that's because right now I feel like my organization is too small. Right now we only have, I think, 8 individuals, 8, but I'd say 2 of them aren't completely, like they didn't give me all the information necessary. So I'd say we have more about 6.5 individuals on my platform. I'm shooting for 10 before I start advertising, like through newspapers or anything like that. But another good thing about my organization is really it doesn't take that much funds, because really I'm mostly just a middleman as of right now, where I just get donations and I give the donations to the artists, or I get donations and I purchase art supplies with that donation and I transfer it to the artist. So really I don't use, like, it doesn't take much funds for me to operate in the first place. So yeah, really it's just gas mileage, transportation. Those are my biggest expenses as of right now. But no, I haven't had any massive advertising as of yet. I'm thinking about launching a campaign pretty soon. I want to get 10 artists before I do that though. So
And
it's more, it seems more legitimate.
and what is your strategy to find these people exactly?
These individual, like the struggling individual.
Yes.
Okay, so what I've been doing is I've just been going up to them and asking them, like, if they, or I also have flyers. Also, I'm in contact with a lot of the shelters, and so I have flyers up too with my contact information and what my organization is about. But I haven't received any nobody has joined my platform from the flyers as of yet. They're up. I don't know if they're doing any work or if they're just being ignored, but those are the 2 ways I've been doing it right now, is through flyers in the shelters themselves and through just going up and asking face to face, do you know anyone or do you do anything? And I only do it during the daytime when it's safe.
Mhm.
And yeah, I don't carry like a ton of money on me or anything, so there's no incentive to attack me. But yeah, that's what I do. Eventually, I think it would be nice to like have like a little like office or something. Maybe not even an office, but some like a box that individuals could drop like pictures of samples of their work and their name and contact information. And so then I could like go through and collect the box like maybe once a week, and then I could go from there. But right now, yeah, it's just all face to face.
Catholic Charities might be a good resource. I'm just putting that out there. I really hope this
Yeah, I've
becomes.
talked to them.
Have you? Mhm.
Yeah, I talked to them a little bit. Yeah, they run House of Charities, I think, which is the big shelter. So I talked to them a little bit.
That's good.
When you were talking about the face-to-face interactions leading to some artists joining, but the flyers not seeming to produce much of a result, it strikes me that especially for folks who are or have been homeless, being seen and being recognized kind of directly is something they may not be very accustomed to by anyone outside of the community that they're already a part of. And I imagine that makes a huge impact, and that nothing else can really compare to that as far as potentially recruiting folks to join.
No, yeah, no, I think that's correct. I think that's good insight. I think that's because a lot of times when I approach them, they have very little trust for me. Like their first question is like, what are you doing? Why are you here? You know, because they know I'm not part of the group. So I'm an outsider approaching them. And usually when an outsider approaches them, it's to yell like, hey, what are you doing here? Like, get off my property, blah, 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 blah. You know, like it's usually out of anger, or maybe it's like out of guilt, like, okay, I'll give them some money. Like it's not really like I see them as a person. It's out of pity or it's out of anger. And so I try to approach them and treat them as an equal. And in that way, I think it does open up their hearts, and then they are more willing to trust me and more willing to work with me. Whereas, yeah, with a flyer, it's more passive and they just walk right by it.
Other comments or questions? So I'll call on my mom here and then Julie. You've got to unmute yourself though.
There.
There we go.
Yeah, thank you. I want to echo in part what Adela said in terms of admiration for what you're doing. It's really an extraordinary project, and I hope that it gets further off the ground. And my questions actually focus on that. You mentioned a few minutes ago that in order to have your organization recognized as a 501c3, you need to have a board. Have you thought about how you would go about approaching people to serve? Where would you look, and so forth? That's one question. And then my other question focuses on grants. Once you are a 501c3, you would have a better chance of securing grants. Wouldn't have to be huge grants, but grants that would be sufficient to keep you afloat and not have to constantly be asking for individual donations, although those are always welcome too, of course. So the matter of board and grants, those were my two questions, two interests.
Okay, for the matter of board of directors, I don't want to hire my friends. I want to hire capable individuals.
Sure.
So what I would want is, I would want to do probably LinkedIn. LinkedIn, I would think, is a good way to network. Maybe I work at Northwest Trustee and Management Services right now, and the guy Steve Treffs is pretty well connected with and pretty involved with charitable organizations. And so I'll talk to him and yeah, I think LinkedIn would be the best way to recruit. Right now, I'm pretty small, so I can do it all myself.
Sure.
But in the future, if I do get bigger and when I do want to get my 501c3, I will need a board of directors, and I want them to be capable people. So I think I'll do LinkedIn, or I'll go to some of the charitable organizations in Spokane, maybe even Seattle, and ask around and see if anyone would be willing to help me out and actually join my team. So yeah, that's
Have
how.
you thought about, since my whole life has been within the realm of academia, have you thought about eventually approaching folks who are in the art world at universities in Spokane, Whitworth, or any one of the other universities, artists who are on the faculty, that kind of thing?
No, I haven't actually. That's a good idea. Yeah, I'll look into that. Where are you? You're a professor, or?
I was. I retired 3.5 years ago. I was a professor at Wayne State University in Detroit for 42 years.
Okay. What were you a professor of?
Well, interdisciplinary studies, German, and Holocaust studies.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to be a professor of economics. That's my dream.
Excellent.
Worthwhile goal. Julie?
I love your direct connection, but I wonder, have you ever thought of going to some of the rehab centers and sort of introducing your program there? Because although the numbers of success are not great, there are they're working on success all the time, and giving artists that might be there an opportunity with you and with your program might be really, really good. And also, I don't know if you're familiar with Spokane Therapeutic Court Program, drug court program, but it exists in Spokane and it's very successful, actually more successful than the rehabs. And when people are referred to the drug program, usually because they've stolen something or they're in jail, they can enter this program and they're monitored by the courts, and they have to work and be clean and be tested. And it's a nonprofit part of the court system, and it might be a really interesting collaboration for you. And also a way for you to look at board members there.
Okay, what was the name of the place?
It's
I'll write
called
that down real quick.
Spokane Therapeutic Courts. I can give the contact to Neil, and he can give it to you.
Oh,
but
okay.
Yeah.
But what was your question?
No, have you thought of going to the? I mean, I like that you're going to the homeless shelters and things directly. I think that's really, really powerful. But I also think it might be good if you collaborated with some of the drug programs that are going on and the rehab centers.
Yeah, no, I agree. I don't think the face-to-face approach is sustainable in the long term. Just because I want to grow, if I want to grow to multiple cities, I can't be in multiple cities at once. The only way I would be able to do that is to hire someone in that city to be a full-time face-to-face person, and might as well just have passive connections being formed all the time without having to do face-to-face. So yeah, no, that's a good idea. A lot of them want you to be 501c3 certified before they trust you completely, because that's how you become deemed as legitimate. So, but yes, I have talked to one group, and they put the flyers up. That's about it. But yeah, no, that's a good idea. I really want passive accumulation of individuals instead of having to do face-to-face all the time. Oh, did I log out?
Cora, do you have a question?
Yeah.
Comment?
Yeah, are you doing any work also with the homeless children?
Homeless children?
Yeah.
No, not currently. No. What I do want to do in the future, though, is go to high schools and identify potential future kids that potentially could fall through the cracks, as they say. And I mean, really, I'm focusing on artwork right now. So, but I do want to do something with kids in high school, maybe middle school, that are potential people that would fall through the cracks, and try to help them showcase or hone in on their talents and make them feel like they have some capability. And it'd be better if you were able to reach them when they were younger, so that way they wouldn't have to go through all, you wouldn't have to try to like dig them out of the hole that they're in when they're 40. They can get out of the hole. They don't even have to go into the hole in the first place. And so, yes, eventually I do want to work with high schools and middle schools for potential kids that are struggling. Yeah, I do want to do that.
But again, what Roslyn mentioned, you do need help from somebody within the art world, within the art teaching, museum curators or art teachers, because they can help you not only with recognizing proper art, but also with the material. They might be able to donate and help you out.
Yes, I do want as much help as possible. I don't want to do this by myself in the long term. That's,
No, you don't.
yeah, I agree. I do want as much help as possible. So yes, I will look at that.
I wanted to mention the nature of your project reminds me a little bit of your organization, reminds me a little bit of something that used to exist and still does apparently in Seattle called Real Change, which is a newspaper, which is by and large written by individuals who are homeless, as I understand it. At least they are significant contributors to the newspaper, and also at least when I lived in Seattle, sold it to generate income. And you know, I think proved to be more empowering than some other initiatives. There's now the common saying, a hand up rather than a hand out, which is, you know, there are some pros and cons to that way of thinking, but I think the main thing is that what you're talking about is to empower and to increase a sense of self-worth and autonomy, and that seems similar. I don't know if you've reached out to that organization, but it might be useful to see how they kind of function and how they put that together. I'll put the link in the chat just for anyone else who might be interested, but it's a neat thing. It's been around for quite a few years.
Yeah, no, I think I've seen homeless people in Seattle selling newspapers, and I thought they were just selling newspapers, but if it's actually ones that they contributed to, like that's very interesting, and that's along the lines of what I want to do. Because I don't want to just do like paintings. I want to do like all kinds of art, like poetry, I would think, novels, like so not just like art galleries, but like all creative expression is what I want to focus on. So yeah, poetry, like there's a girl, the girl Katie that I talked about, she knits. Like she's made some like pretty cool stuff I saw. Like she makes outfits, clothing. So like really just all creative expression, not just like, yes, paintings, and paintings are amazing. I love paintings, but all creative expression is what I want to highlight. Poetry, music. Yeah. Yeah. No, that's good.
I could see the potential for a very powerful event that's either a fundraiser or some kind of event to raise awareness that would have performance as well by members of the community that you're establishing. Even, I mean, who knows how long it'll be till we're all off Zoom, potentially even over Zoom, but eventually really powerful in person at some kind of a venue.
Yeah, that'd be amazing. That'd be amazing.
Adele,
The name, the Minerva Proposal, if you don't know, you probably do, but Minerva is the Roman goddess of artwork and community, and Athena was her name in Greece. So she was and once a year they would actually have, I talk about this in my about page, but once a year, like all the worshipers of Minerva in Rome would have just a massive 3-day celebration where they celebrate all the arts. Like poets would come together and like they would recite poetry, musicians would play, painters would paint, and it would just be like a 3-day festival celebrating the arts every year. And yeah, no, that's something like that. That's why I chose the name, because I want to highlight community and I want to highlight arts. And so a project like that would fit perfectly, like a performance, a festival or something of that sort would fit perfectly with my name and with what my organization hopes to accomplish.
Ah, to have lived in ancient Rome. I'm sure there were plenty of downsides. Adela, did you have a comment or a question?
Well, I just wanted to say it might be worthwhile to contact Family Promise, which is a group, interfaith group. I don't know if it's mostly Protestant, it may be, but they house homeless in their churches and feed them for a certain period of time. And just people involved with that might be able to help you. I think another one is the what is it called? The is it Karl Moxie Center? What is it called, Neil? The Black
Karl Maxey Center, yes.
Moxie Center. That might be another good place to contact, because let's face it, there's a lot of homeless people, especially now, and these kinds of organizations, whether you'll get the help that you need, but it would be, I think, worthwhile to contact them.
The Maxey Center is located in East Central Spokane, which is one of the lowest income neighborhoods in Spokane.
Okay, yeah, I'll check it out. I reached out actually when I emailed you in the first place. What I did was I emailed all of the big religious groups in Spokane.
Mhm.
So I emailed you guys. I emailed the Muslim mosque. And I emailed tons of Christian churches, and you guys were the only ones that responded. So for that, I'm very grateful. Well, not the only ones that responded, but the only ones that wanted to host me. The one Christian church, since Christians are known for wanting to proselytize, like they want to convert, and so what they didn't really like was they didn't think it had a strong Jesus message and a strong, because Minerva is a Roman goddess, so like it's like polytheistic, like they thought I was promoting something like that, and I was like, no, it was the idea behind what she represented. So yeah, I haven't had very good luck with the Christian community in supporting this. So
well, let me, off the call later, I can send you maybe a couple connections within that community that might be a bit more fruitful. But I will say, I'd like to think that our Jewish community, like many, takes seriously the values of tikkun olam, which, is kind of to repair the world, to try to make better or make less bad, I guess, the things where there's suffering, that sort of thing, and loving kindness, trying to do acts of loving kindness. So, I'd like to think that, this is a community where those are prominent values. I think it is. And so I'm glad to hear that, that you've reached out to others and that we kind of showed interest. But I would encourage you, and as I said, I'll try to send you in a couple of directions. I was going to mention something actually about proselytizing when you were talking about approaching individuals directly at House of Charity, which is I've known people in Spokane who have done work where they are simply providing food, like a bag lunch or something, to someone who's on the street, and talking with them a bit and having some kind of getting to know them a bit, to regard them as an equal, as you were saying. And one of the number one things this person who did this work told me that the homeless individuals would expect was proselytizing. They assumed who would give them food if they weren't going to then proselytize, but that was not part of the agenda. But I think that kind of, it's something people are often wary, because they don't understand why someone would help them unless they had an agenda, which is sad but understandable that they would have that perception.
Yeah, no, I mean, I've experienced something like that at the University of Washington. I remember when I was a freshman, like these group of people just came up to me and they're like, hey, do you want to talk or something? And I was like, yeah, sure. They're like, we'll buy you dinner. I was like, okay. And then I went and like hung out and they seemed cool. And then afterwards they're like, do you guys want to come to my church? And I was like, whoa, whoa, whoa. I thought we were just talking. Like, I don't know. I've noticed that. I've noticed that there's a lot of giving under the pretense of giving, but it's actually under the pretense of conversion.
Well,
Yeah.
I think to balance the record, I should say there are many faith-based organizations in Spokane and other places doing very good work. But I do think that there are some doors that will open for you because you're not a faith-based organization that might not otherwise. So I think there are two sides to it.
Mhm.
Yeah, I myself am a Christian, but I don't want to tie this to, I want it to be secular, you know? So, yeah.
Sure.
May I? Neil?
Yeah.
Yeah, you were talking about looking for a board of directors and all that for your charity. A simple advice, don't look at churches or synagogues or mosque. Look at a bank, get somebody from one of the popular banks, get somebody from universities, faculty. It's a kind of an honor for them, and yet can be very helpful for you. They will put you on the right path. I don't know if you want to accept my advice or not.
You cut out, so I didn't hear what you had to say completely, but I think you said something along the lines of don't go to churches, go to like professionals, right? Or
Right.
academics.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, no, I agree.
Right.
Can I say something? Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead, Adela.
Wait, okay, I just wanted to say, when I was mentioning churches and Catholic charities, et cetera, I was really thinking more of people they might know, homeless people that would maybe be interested in this kind of, that would have artistic talent or something. That was my objective in telling you. So I just wanted to clarify that.
I
We
think
lost him?
I think we've lost him.
yes,
Nope.
temporarily.
So,
There
right,
he
he's back.
is.
There it is.
Sorry. My
Right.
internet.
Okay. So one more question, I think, before we wrap up.
Roz had one.
Yes, that's right.
I just wanted to reiterate and also build on what Cora said, that eventually when you're looking for board members, you want people who are well credentialed across the disciplines, so to speak. So
Mhm.
if you have a person in the art world, if you have a person in a bank, if you have a person in some other from, it could be from a faith community, could be, and so forth. You'd have a diverse group when eventually you're looking to secure grants, because the work that you're doing is ripe for securing grants from the state, from the nationally as well, but certainly from your state. And they'd be looking for people who are well credentialed and who've taken a really, really strong interest in your project. So that's all I wanted to add.
Okay. Yeah, no, I want to have a specialized, like, I want every individual to have a specialty that they can provide. I don't want to just have redundant copies of people with the same skill set. Yeah, no, I 100% agree. I want to have people that are specializing in certain sectors that benefit me. And also, I don't think I answered your question earlier about the grants. What exactly was your question earlier about the grants?
My question was, at this point, you probably would not be in a situation to apply for grants. But once you have your 10 artists, or maybe 15, or maybe even 20, and you have your board members, that would be a time to think about applying for small grants at first and then larger grants later on.
Do you need a 501c3 designation before you can apply for grants? Yeah.
Well, I don't
Not
know.
all. Not
Okay.
all grants.
I think
But
not
many.
all, not
But
all, but many. Yeah. Right.
Thank you, Rosalind, that you added what you added, because that will give him more credibility within, and also a person that might help him. It's Mary with the publication, the interfaith publication. What's her
Stamp,
name?
Mary Stamp
Stamp.
at the Fig
She
Tree.
is a very good person to get in touch with and have an interview with her. That might help. She's a lovely, lovely lady.
Definitely.
What's her name? I can write that.
So she's Mary Stamp. She's the, I don't remember if she's the publisher or editor, but she's
the editor.
The editor of the Fig Tree newspaper, which is interfaith, but also just highlights
community.
Good work. Yeah, community, good work that's being done to help people. So it's not, you don't have to be a religious entity to be featured or to, you know, be in their resource directory. So yes, I've put the link for that in the chat as well. Well, I think we're getting near to the end of our time, but I really want to thank you, John, for spending this time with us and for talking with us about the work you're doing. I want to say, you know, it is a time both in Spokane and I think nationally that proposed solutions or attempts to help individuals who are homeless, it's a very controversial and divisive issue. And I think that projects like this, in highlighting the humanity of the individuals in question, stands a better chance than many at kind of trying to bridge to those divides again. So I really appreciate the work and just the time and attention you're paying to people and to a population group that rarely get, you know, many people attention.
May I add something?
Yeah.
Yes.
This is a time that I'm grateful that the next generation, as a matter of fact, several generations past us, there is hope. When I see somebody taking action like you did, it makes me feel good. I mean, what we're going through right now, it's miserable. And this is a kind of a spark of light. And thank you very much for doing that. We are proud of you.
Thank you. Thank you.
I agree. I will certainly try to contact people in Coeur d'Alene, which is where I live, if they can be of any help to you. I don't know that, but I will certainly put the word out when I can. We just started a music conservatory in Coeur d'Alene that I'm on the board for. So I will ask when I can.
Yeah, I appreciate any help. Any help. I appreciate it.
Sure. Absolutely.
Wonderful. Well, I'll send out the link, and if it's all right with you, John, your email address to everyone here in case they have any other leads or advice for you.
Yeah, yeah, and also the website name, if they want to go check it out, they can check it out right now. It's I can type it in the chat if I can.
Sure, that sounds just fine. And I'll send it out as well. So I want to thank everyone for attending today. It's wonderful to see your faces as always. And again, John, thank you very much for your time.
No, thank you. Thank you for giving me a platform to talk about this.
Of course.
The best of luck to you.
Really wonderful. Lots of luck.
Good
John.
luck.
Lots of
Thank
luck.
All right.
Yeah, thanks so much. It's really great.